So honoring the divine feminine was, of course, a precursor to what I ended up focusing on this morning. I think it was a few days ago I wrote this other talk, and it was something that came out of meditation and walking and thinking, and it had to do with this point that we all arrive at when we go from being the child to becoming the adult, when we go from being the recipient of all of that sweet love to being the one who is in the position of giving it. And that's still going to pop up a little bit in what I am going to talk about this morning, and it was originally the focus. What happened, though, is when I was looking for some material from Ernest Holmes, I pulled this off my shelf. I think that I got this from the Institute of Noetic Sciences as a gift back in the 90s. They may still, when you join them, send out something by Ernest Holmes. So this is called a Holmes Reader for All Seasons. And by the way, if you ever want to find some juicy material that was written by Ernest Holmes and others like him, there's something called the Holmes Foundation online. And they have archives, and you can find all kinds of neat things there. So in here, I found an article called The Miracle of Mother Love, which is by Ernest Holmes and Fletcher Harding. I'm guessing that Fletcher Harding is another guy. So here are these two male metaphysicians preparing a lesson on the miracle of mother love. I'm presuming that it was for publication in the month of May. Then perhaps it was for a talk around Mother's Day, or something like that. And so, of course, I'm always looking for universality. I'm just wired that way. I'm so wired that way that those of you who've ever heard me speak about spirit, I'm always talking about it in gender-neutral terms. And I feel personally that I'm not attracted to a long-time tradition of using the masculine pronouns, nor do I believe that the alternative is to focus entirely on the feminine. I'm really fascinated with the balance of the masculine and feminine archetypes within each of us as the holy union that produces life. And so I'm just real big on that. And if you ever notice how I speak, it's because I'm loyal to that neutrality. Because what I believe that does is that it includes all and leaves out none. And still, there are qualities about the divine aspect of this union, of this relationship, of this creative process that are essential to our being here at all. And they're also essential to our creating at all. So they're essential both to our having been created and to our being creative. So we honor our mothers. And some of us brought in pictures of our mothers and placed them here on the altar. We also honor the mothers in this group here this morning. If you'd be willing to raise your hand, I would just love to know who those women are. Okay, yeah. Yes, and the guys know that they're too. And finally, we honor that divine principle that we sometimes refer to as the feminine, that is within every one of us, regardless of our gender. That one I spoke of, that has caused us to be here, and through which we bring other things into life. So it's all that. So in the miracle of mother love, one of the first things that Holmes and Harding talk about is this concept of impartation. They say that what differentiates mother love from other types of love is this thing called impartation. And here are some examples from a definition online of what that word really means. It means to make known and to communicate. It also means to pass on, to convey, to transmit, relay, relate, recount, tell, make known, make public, report, announce, proclaim, herald, spread, disseminate, circulate, broadcast, and bestow. But most importantly, it says that it means to give a share of. To give a share of. It comes from Latin terms meaning in and part. And so to impart this mother love that is unique from other types of love is this kind of thing that literally gives a share of itself, gives a share of herself to everything that it creates. I'm going to go back to my comfortable neutrality, or I'll just be very confused, and so will you. Okay. So this type of love that actually gives something of itself in the creation of new life is the one that we're talking about today. And how beautiful to witness that in its most understandable form when a mother becomes pregnant with a child. A beautiful transformation takes place that they describe in this article. Instantly, her demeanor shifts. Instantly, she is not only prepared to be the mother and to be able to teach and guide and provide for this baby even before it is born. But both of them, the mother and the child, are prepared and guided instantly from that moment when that life begins. And so one of the things that Holmes and Harding wanted to illustrate is that if we reflect on that for a moment, we realize that Spirit, Creator, the I Am principle, the Holy Mother, Father, Mother, God, did this when we were created. And is still doing this for us right now. For us right now. And we'll get to the through us part in a moment. But really that the moment the decision was made to be here, everything in the universe began to coalesce to make sure, just as what Aggie read earlier, everything necessary for our fulfillment began to line up. Everyone and everything. And if we missed that bus, another one came, If we missed that opportunity, another one showed up. There's no limit to the confluence of everything necessary for the fulfillment of any idea in the universe, including the idea of you and the idea of me. We speak of this analogy of a seed often in our classes for the same reason, because a seed contains within it everything necessary for its fulfillment. So we have this idea then that mother love, divine love, imparts to us in the creation of us. And when we reach that point in our lives where we begin to be creative, we too impart that same love in our creations. So Holmes and Harding said, well, how about this? What if parents were able to know that the love that they're passing on to their children is that same divine love? They speak of a divine ancestry. The origin in the all that is. So this love that they're passing on to their children is love that comes directly from the source of all life itself. Love. That in doing that, every child receives the purest and the most unadulterated form of that love that gives rise to health and self-confidence and inspiration and well-being and more and more and more. And once again, they suggest that we would do well to know that that is the truth about the love upon which we call and the love that we share. So going on from there, there's then a little bit of an illustration also about this idea that Ernest Holmes says, I'll see if I can. I love the thought that we are surrounded by the womb of nature, which gives birth to all ideas. Actually, I don't know which one of them said it, because two guys wrote the article, and it's in the first person, go figure. So this idea that we're literally surrounded by this creative medium, that we're in this infinite vessel, is just magnificent. In our classes, we talk a great deal about the subconscious, about the creative medium, about the soul, and we use the analogy of the soil to represent that. All of those qualities are part of this creative medium. And we have an individual experience of it, which is how we create. And we have a universal one, which is how we're connected with all creativity. It is through our individual connection with and experience of the universal that we create. So how fantastic to think that we're literally surrounded by the womb of nature. And again, these two gentlemen say, isn't that beautiful then? That every single thing that is impressed upon the mind, as if the mind were impregnated with an idea, is prepared, is provided for, is cared for, and nurtured, because both us and the ones in relationship with that individual mind, and the creation that we are embarking on, we are instantly prepared, just as the mother who finds that she's expecting. We are instantly transformed to know what to do and how and when. Things just wake up in us that we didn't know before. Isn't that beautiful? That is part of divine love, part of mother love in the process of creation. And we are provided for. We instinctively know how to provide for this thing that we are creating. And we are provided for. And of course, there's a realization that it's a cycle. It's a constantly ongoing cycle, because we are born and then we give birth to, and then our offspring grows up and becomes a parent in the literal sense, and so on. And also, even if we didn't become biological parents on this plane in this lifetime, we are born and we create, and that which we create grows. It activates the law of growth, as we've been studying in our Troward class. It takes on a life of its own. It has an appetite of its own. It cries out and says, feed me. It tells us what it needs. And it begins to take on this life that is self-perpetuating, and eventually becomes this thing that has its own offspring and leaves its own legacy. Can you see how this could apply to anything that you have begun in life? I recognize that it can also apply. I love springtime. I just love, harping on renewal. It can apply to something in our lives that's ready for some renewal, perhaps that we've been doing for a while. Because if this cycle is constantly going on, that means it's present and available for us. Always. Always. So Ernest and Fletcher go on to talk about this idea then, that if it is true that we're surrounded by the womb of nature, and if it is true that when the mind is impregnated with an idea, we immediately know how to nurture it and bring it forth, because that's how we're wired, and we're surrounded by all of the other parts and pieces that know too, and that's the way it is, then the next question becomes, do we cradle it in our heart of hearts? Do we care for it as an expectant mother cares for the life growing within her? Do we take care of ourselves along the way? Do we receive the nutrition, the nurturing, the guidance, the preparation, the provision, the direction that we need? You see? Do we receive what we need in order to be present for this thing we're creating? And do we take care of it as an expectant mother cares for the arrival of her baby? And then, do we do so with joyous expectancy as a mother who is absolutely certain that her baby is coming? Absolutely certain. Do we prepare places for this arrival? Do we throw parties? Do we make some adjustments in our lifestyle? Do we set aside some more money? Do we paint a room a different color? Do we buy some new outfits? Do we add on a room? What do we do? And do we wake up every morning and go to bed every night thinking, yes, this is definitely happening. I am so excited. I am so grateful. I am so certain. They go on to say that biblical teaching suggests that when we pray believing and thankfully. That we literally declare something as already accomplished. And that the air of celebration is just so huge because we're absolutely certain that this thing is going to occur. This is what we study and practice in our classes about how to pray believing. Not supplicating, but declaring, which requires us to get through some old conditioning. And then to be thankful and delighted for what we can't see yet. To access some kind of a certainty that's not based on what we can see. And to be joyously expectant, which is different from having expectations, right? It's all affirmative. It's all about creating that spiritual prototype, that mold. It's about digging those ditches. It's about creating those molds into which the infinite can pour and take shape. That is that divine formative principle that will create according to whatever mold we give it. It is that creative principle that will produce form and life and nurture it and teach it and direct it and protect it. But we, as individuals with free choice, get to choose what is that impress. What is that thing that we're going to plant, that we're going to see, that we're going to nurture and grow and give birth to? What is it? And the answer to that question, too, comes in communing with the divine and listening to that voice within us that knows and saying yes. See that? And when we say yes, we're back into the divine receptive again. It's such a beautiful thing. So what I'd like to do right now is I'm going to invite Neshama to come up and just play a little bit in the background while we do a ritual, because we do one every year. And I have an affirmation. Oh, I have one more word I got to share with you before we do that. They speak of the cosmic matrix. And do you know that matrix comes from the Latin root meaning mother? I just Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is share this affirmation that Holmes and Harding suggest that we say, or something like it, every day to help us remember to care for that life and to care for ourselves in preparation for its arrival, and to do so believing with joyous anticipation. It goes like this. I live and move and have my being in the eternal presence of Father, Mother, God. I know this divine parent nurtures my every prayer into fulfillment. I neither fear nor doubt that the creative principle of life shall respond to everything I sincerely believe in my heart.